Welcome back to Out of the FHIR. This episode is a boots on the ground recap of HIMSS 2026, 3 packed days that made one thing clear. Healthcare interoperability isn't just a talking point anymore, it's accelerating. Strong panels led by Pooja Babra, Scott Rissenol, Michael Westover, and others brought a real substance, less theory, more execution. The conversations weren't just about standards, but about how to actually make data move, work, and matter across the conference. There was a noticeable shift in energy. You could feel it in the rooms, in the hallway conversations, and especially on the exhibit floor. Vendors weren't just showcasing products, they were building what can only be described as AI agent factories. The focus is evolving fast from storing data to activating it. A few themes kept coming up again and again. Data needs to be shared more freely. Data should be treated as a product from zwei. Yes, curated data is becoming essential, especially for personal AI use cases, and underpinning all of it is the next big transition, the health data reasoning on large language models. Platforms like Claude, along with emerging efforts like HealthX, are starting to show what that future could look like. Beyond the tech, HIMSS is always about people. It was a privilege to connect with leaders across the space. Rachel Dunscombe, stepping into her role as HL7 president, Priyanka Agarwal from HealthX, Aaron from Databricks, and many others pushing this ecosystem forward. And of course, the community showed up. The Health Tech Nerds happy hour and dinner was a standout moment, one of those gatherings that reminds you why this work matters and why this community keeps growing. This episode breaks it all down, what's real, what's hype, and where things are actually headed next.
We're at the first day of HIMSS 2026 in Las Vegas. And so joined with me today are two, what would we say, industry influencers. And so with me, we've got Ron. Ron, would you do an introduction? Tell people who you are.
Ron Wong of De Facto Health, one of the founders of De Facto Health. We are the managers of the largest data set of healthcare providers and the insurances they accept.
Thank you. And Eugene?
Eugene, am a FHIR community influencer person or whatever I am. And I also have a full-time job. I'm responsible for interoperability at a company called Outcomes. It's one of the largest pharmacy networks in the country. And I have a blog and a podcast. So check it out. Out of the FHIR and FHIR IQ Playbook.
And so my name is Bridget Thibault, and people know me online as being involved in interoperability and master data management. So master data management sits upstream of all of the different FHIRs and different data solutions that exist across our nation. So I help guide organizations in developing their master data, and my passion lies in provider data. So we've got some questions for folks today, and we want to be able to entertain you guys with what we see coming on the horizon. So Ron, you get to go first. What brought you to HIMSS this year?
There's a couple of things. One is I want to engage with some of the folks who are publishing these APIs. So that's a combination of the payers themselves who are responsible and are required to publish these APIs, but also their API vendors. So, and oftentimes those API vendors sit downstream from master data management and some of the source of truth system of record repositories. So it's always an interesting conversation as we see issues in the API. Sometimes it's an issue with the API itself, and oftentimes it's issues with the upstream data. So I'm sure we'll go into a lot more about that, but just engaging with the industry and the community on a lot of the issues that we're seeing and some of the emergent requirements that we're seeing from a regulatory perspective.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to peek into what those requirements are going to look like over the coming few months and into the next year. And there are some pretty significant shifts and the lift that it's going to take for organizations to get ready to develop some of those things, even the most basic things like what you would think the languages that a provider might speak and being able to break those things down. Those are not little things to talk about. And so for technical team members to get that type of data ready, they might be able to get it ready if it exists. And the important part is getting the data ready and getting agreement on being able to present it so that we can make it available across the nation. So Eugene, what brought you this year to HIMSS?
So I've actually never been to HIMSS or Las Vegas. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to come down and talk about all the exciting things we have going on with healthcare data and AI and interoperability and all the good things like provider directory that are all super, super important to drive, the next level of, capabilities in empowering the patients and providers. I think we're all seeing, how broken the system is, and it's still very broken where, we have these wonderful, interstate highways that have been set up, but people still can't find which bus they need to take because there is no schedule that's published that's actually accurate across the country, right? So you have to go and find it yourself, and you may find the right provider information on your insurers if it's one of the good insurers, right? So I think there are some that get A all the way down to the ones that get an F.
There's a spectrum.
There's a whole spectrum of data. And really, I think a lot of patients suffer real consequences because of that. And recently on my blog, I actually wrote about collecting and combining all of my healthcare data together from different sources and then aggregating it using Claude and AI and OpenClaw and all the kind of other cool stuff. And it's really incredible what you can do now having access to data. So we really need to plug those gaps and enable that efficient exchange of data. And, provider director is key in that effort. None of my actually PCP's data was on TEFCA when I connected, and I had to actually go and pull it separately to bring it in. And it's a real problem, especially people can't find their providers, things like that. So I think all of this is connected. And so that's why it's so critical and important.
Can we unpack maybe one statement that you made about how there's a spectrum of data quality? I think that's super important because there's an assumption, and some folks in the industry kind of paint with a broad stroke that, hey, all the data is bad or everybody has bad data, so there's nothing to worry about here. I think we need to pick that apart because I think there are some folks, both payer and provider organizations, that are performing at much higher quality of data than others are. And that's happening on both sides. And that's demographic and lookup data for patients to find care, but it's also around the digital endpoints to be able for patients to access their own information.
Right. So I think there's a term for this in the healthcare industry, like healthcare deserts, and there's all kinds of interpretations of that, but I think there's probably a provider directory desert type of situation as well, where some areas of the country you're in pretty good hands, and other areas you're not. So we really need to have those payers and providers step up and really give that elementary information out, which will help them as well as it will help others, as well as their patients and members, right?
And I think to comment on that, it's very true. It's a big divide where there's organizations I speak to who physically have not heard of things such as the CMS 0057 earlier today. I had a leader from a very prestigious organization not have the familiarity, but knows that they have the accountability. Whereas other organizations, and we'll see their names all the time, you'll see Providence, you'll see Multicare, you'll see on the payer side, the Blues at the association level, you'll see United, Optum. They're ahead of scale because they've been working at this for a number of years. And so it's not new to them. They've put the resources in place. They've put the teams together. They brought the people in to develop the actual technologies. And now they have the ability to be able to message out across the nation how it's made a difference for them, not in just helping either their members or their patients or their providers in their communities, but it's allowed them to be able to sit at the intersection of moving the industry forward. And so, to your point, it's important to be able to do the education pieces, right? And to help people. So, what do you want to contribute at HIMSS? I like to tell my teams that get your mind ready before you walk into HIMSS and think about what you want out of it, but also what you want to be able to give. And so, from a giving standpoint for myself, I like to walk into HIMSS with the mindset that I'm here to contribute. And that means that if you see us, right, then feel free to ask us questions, ask us how we've been able to solve these types of dilemmas at organizations that we help, and that it's an open door opportunity. Or if we consult, it's a free consulting for folks. If you see us and pull us aside while we're here. What do you hope to be able to give at the event, Ron?
So for any health insurer or any of the vendors who support them, I will provide as much constructive feedback on their provider directory APIs and their directory data as they're interested in. And we can pick that apart. I'm also interested in engaging with them on the MA Plan Finder requirements. Those are new, emergent, and also more stringent requirements than we've seen before around their APIs and what data needs to flow through the APIs. And I don't think right now most people are realizing the gap between what is being expected of them and what where they currently are. CMS wants to use this data to populate the MA plan finder. And if the data doesn't show up or the APIs aren't working, then those MA plans may just not show up with an MA plan finder. And I know that a lot of payers are hurting real bad on the Medicare Advantage side right now. So we wouldn't want this to layer on top of the challenges you're already facing.
So to your point, then how, if people see this over the next few days, then how can people contact you while you're here? Obviously, you're going to be busy. Should they reach out to you through the HIMSS app, or should they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
HIMSS app, LinkedIn, I'll be monitoring both.
And Eugene, what would you like to make available for folks then at HIMSS this year?
We actually have discussed with Ron as well a potential pilot project on creating an app where folks like providers, nursing professionals, and others that have to submit their information to many different plan directories and portals to actually create a single place for people to go. And that project's called AIMPI, and which I personally vibe coded and is available on my GitHub. But we would like to discuss with folks that would be willing participants in maybe trying out how we can close this gap where providers can have one place to go and update their information. And we are the ones that are going to be sending them that data to certain ready provider systems that have enabled bidirectional FHIR exchange, which is not many, but hopefully there are some out there, and will let us test that. So if you're one of those, let us know.
And then for myself, if you see me, you can either connect in person, pull me aside, connect with me on LinkedIn. The app I'll try to monitor, but hit me on LinkedIn, that's faster. And then in terms of the type of provider data that your organization needs and the manner by which it needs to be standardized and ready to go to feed those APIs to fulfill the things these guys are talking about, I'm happy to give you the down low real quick. We'll scratch it out on paper and I can do an inventory of what you currently have versus what you're going to need and the areas that you really need to start to get your resources around to get ready for the future requirements that are also coming. As I mentioned, many organizations haven't even started to have the data governance or master data conversations around those types of data elements and the complexity around getting them ready. And you can't just buy them. So what are the exciting things that you guys are hoping to get out of different presentations that are here this in the next few days?
I'm looking forward to seeing some of presentations and panels that Amy Gleason and some of the folks from CMS are going to be giving, just to see what's on the roadmap.
And Eugene, what about you?
Yeah, so obviously love to see all the progress around all the interoperability and patient empowerment, as well as the efforts on CMS 0057, as well as very passionate about enabling pharmacy interoperability as well. So looking forward to connecting with Pooja and others, and Kim Boyd and others on the pharmacy interoperability group, and just meeting lots of really cool companies in the space like MedPlum, lots of Fasten Health, other builders that are building in the space and have a lot of cool stuff to show. So
that's great. I'm also looking to collaborate a little bit with our folks that are coming over from Europe. So I'm excited to meet the folks from FHIR Metrics as they come over. And then in addition to that, I'm also this year wanting to cut my teeth, as it were, into the dental industry. We know that there's work efforts coming in that space as it relates to interoperability. For those of us that have been in this industry for a number of years, it's a great opportunity to be able to start to contribute also over to our friends from the dental industry.
Actually, funny enough, you mentioned FHIR Metrics. I actually know those folks and can introduce you.
Okay, sounds good. Let me send it up.
Hello, day 3 of HIMSS. I'm here with James Agnew. And if you've ever tried to learn FHIR, you remember the YouTube video that has gone viral. It's probably like most people's first introduction to FHIR. How do you feel about being people's first exposure to FHIR?
That video has taken a life of its own on. Honestly, that was a quick pandemic project when we did it. We thought, we've got nothing else to do. We're all sitting at home. Let's try a video. And I thought, maybe 20 people would watch it. It has just shocked me, the worldwide reach that video has had. Amazing.
Yeah. I got to say, it's not just engineers. You have the engineers that are trying to figure out what the heck FHIR is, and they Google, and then your video comes up. And I think Gino Canessa is the other one that has a big list there. But I've heard a lot of really amazing positive things from product managers, salespeople, just the fact that you make it so easy to understand. And to that point, what do you think about the state of obviously where FHIR education is right now, and how can we help to one of the reasons I started my podcast and the Substack is because I saw like not a lot of real world experience and people sharing that. What do you think about where we are with that? Is it getting better and better? Are you getting still, lots of questions from engineers about it, or is it like, oh yeah, I actually know this stuff?
I mean, honestly, this sounds like a bad thing, and I don't think it is. I think it's getting worse and worse, but I think it's getting worse and worse, maybe in a good way. Let me explain. I would say even 5 years ago, and especially, in the early days of FHIR, it was possible for really, anyone who was deeply involved in the community to understand the complete FHIR specification. There was a time when I could say, I know the whole spec. You ask me a question, it's pretty likely you're not going to stump me. I'm going to have the answer to it. It was inevitable, I think, with the growth of the community as we moved out into, more and more parts of healthcare. And healthcare, of course, is super complicated. It was inevitable we were going to reach a point where it was too big for any one person to fully understand it. I mean, the FHIR spec has long since blown past the point where I know the whole thing. I know a lot about the parts I'm interested in, and there's experts in all the other points. I mean, my only hope is that more people like myself, of course, but you mentioned Gino Canessa. I mean, Gino is probably the world's foremost expert in subscriptions, for example, and he's done a great job in dumbing down subscriptions to the point where, the mere mortals, you and I, can understand the hardest parts of subscriptions. I really do hope that more people will come along and pick other complicated parts of the specification. I mean, let's be honest, dumb them down for the rest of us.
Yeah, and it's a good example of that, I think, is I don't know if you follow the Sequel on Fire working group.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the big benefit of the kind of the whole view definition concept is that you don't need to grab the whole fire resource.
Yep.
Just take the parts that you need, right? It's like same as when you go to a buffet, you don't eat everything on the and I think we do have that. That's a frequent source of confusion. Developers, product managers will be like, "Oh, we're adopting fire, so that means we got to use everything." And it's like, no, just take the pieces that you need and adopt them to your problem you're trying to solve and your use case, right?
I mean, a really interesting point there, I feel like, is it's still, I think it's really hard for a newcomer to FHIR. As it gets bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder to figure out, where do I start? What do I need? I mean, maybe there's an idea for another video, right? Like just sort of figuring out, I am in the scheduling space. And I mean, obviously there are scheduling resources, but how do you understand which IGs apply to you?
Yeah.
How do you understand which resources, who else is working in that space? I mean, it's getting harder and harder to navigate.
Which connectathon or which working group out of the 40 or 50 some odd, right? Like that. Which ones do I need to participate on, and how do I work together with people on that? And so what happens once we publish an IG, right? That's only like almost a starting point. That's doesn't mean you reach the finish line. Now you got to implement the thing.
Absolutely.
So what lessons and learnings do you have from, obviously, I think Smile, when I think of FHIR, I think Smile, CBR, one of the most successful implementations of FHIR and companies around. What advice and learnings can you share with people on why you've been able to be so successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I've said this many times, community, community, community. I mean, whatever problem you're trying to solve, it's unlikely you're the only one who's ever had to try and solve it. And if it's new enough that nobody has, you're probably not the only one working on it today. The hard part, of course, is finding the community working on your problems. But I guarantee you, or at least I bet they're out there. Certainly, I mean, just to make the point, which has always been made, chat.fhir.org is the focal point online of that FHIR community. And that is, I feel like I say this monthly to somebody. If you've got a question, if you've got a weird problem, start there. Talk about what you're working on, see who else has that problem.
And overcome that initial hesitation, which is what I had.
Yeah.
I probably joined Zulip years ago, and I probably posted one question in a matter of 3 years. And then in the last year, I've gotten a little bit more involved as I've been involved in the working group. But really don't hesitate. Just go on there, and the water's warm and people are really nice. I mean, nobody will jump on you and tell you
that's the important point, right? Like that community is much more friendly than you expect for a technical community.
And there's actually, I think there's some tools that people are working on. People have byte coded different apps where you could go and search and get like a really nice AI summary of like what you're supposed to do if you have a certain problem. So there's a lot of ways to get that community, knowledge base now, kind of like a Wikipedia, right? FHIR. Okay. So let's talk about another topic that's near and dear to me, which is the quality measurement and CQL. Do you feel like that could be a big benefit for people adopting FHIR, is now being able to do all of this on real-time data, population health.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, 100%. I think that I've thought about a bunch in recent, recent months, recent years is I feel like CQL is following a similar trajectory to FHIR, but it's maybe 5 years behind it, right? Like
Yeah.
FHIR has sort of, I think, reached that point in I mean, if we can say this, in the hype curve where we've gotten past sort of inflated expectations and people are sort of figuring out what's it good for, what's it not good for, and how do I solve real world problems with it. We're certainly not there yet with CQL.
Yeah.
I mean, I fully believe that there is a there, if we can say that. Like, I think it's a fascinating technology, but I don't think we've reached the point yet where people truly understand what can we do with it and what can't we do with it and how am I productive with all of that. So
Yeah.
I think the next couple of years are going to be where that sort of lands and
And I think
stabilizes. I mean, even the name, clinical quality language, clearly we've blown past the use there.
And I think that may have been not the best way to describe it, but you're documenting the codifying clinical requirements, clinical guidelines in code, and then you're basically defining the FHIR resources that go into that, which you have terminology as part of that value set. I mean, it is extremely complex, right?
Yep.
So anything else, James, that you would want to say to folks
Well,
that are interested in FHIR?
I've always got to give the shout out for our Happy FHIR community. We love people getting involved in that. We love people contributing. We love people asking questions. So certainly, we'd love to talk to anyone who's interested in contributing there. I mean, other than that, I'll say it again: join the broader FHIR community. It's a welcoming place.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you can go, if you're using your AI agent builder tools like Claude Code or other, you can ask it to deploy a Happy server, and it does so in a matter of minutes, which is huge. Yeah, thank you, Sandra.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate chatting with you. All right.
Cool.
Hey everyone, day 3 of HIMSS 2026 in Las Vegas, and I'm here with Andy Epifani, say your name, and engineering manager at Heidi, one of the probably top scribes, and really cool to connect. We first met at the FHIR camp in Portugal, and I know you guys are doing amazing work with integrating into the EMRs. So want to talk about how you're using data to power Heidi, and then how does Heidi provide value to the provider and the patient as well. Yeah. And how you guys are, structuring that interaction.
Yeah, sure. Well, Heidi is a scribe, as you might know. So, originally an AI scribe, and of course we had to integrate with as many EHRs as we could because we need to support, all clinician workflows, right? And so one thing that we learned really quickly is that even though there are standards in the world of interoperability, they're not really adopted as standards. A lot of people have customized the way they even use FHIR or FHIR resources, modified to fit whatever the EMR was designed for. Right. And actually, the vast majority of EMRs don't use FHIR yet, especially outside of the US. And so one of the biggest challenges we had was how can we bring all these different types of data that are coming to us and sort of unify them in a way that works for us. Right? And so what we ended up doing was creating this kind of standard data model that we use internally, which can support FHIR both ways. So we can turn Heidi data into FHIR, and we can read FHIR and turn that into Heidi data pretty easily now. And that's allowing us to essentially integrate with many, many different types of EHRs. Yeah.
So Heidi underneath is not just a custom data model that you guys have created, but it also creates these reusable pieces essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
That you don't have to just, throw away. You can actually keep
reuse and keep improving.
Yeah.
And yes. Yeah.
And you guys integrate with all the EMRs, pretty much all the what do you think about your competition? So are you guys thinking about AI scribes as more than just a very specific tool, but really trying to reinvent the whole workflow?
Yeah, definitely.
Healthcare?
I mean, you saw we launched Heidi Evidence a few weeks ago. That's kind of we got connected over that. That data for that is critical, right? And having that product embedded inside of Scribe, alongside your patient information and notes, and clinical notes, and all of that, it's going to support workflows a lot more than just having describe as a standalone product and then an evidence product and then a different product here, right? So the reason why we had to unify all the data internally is because of that. Because when you go from just having one product with one set of data to like multiple products, they have to share data and have to like talk to each other in a way that is meaningful. We have to find a way to standardize how we say it.
No, that's great. I feel like it's a really good combination. Actually, a good friend of mine who's a physician at a relatively large hospital and part of a large health system in Western PA, and he's using Upbridge and Vexivity.
Right.
And I think they love using them both, but it just makes sense to have it. Why do you need two different apps?
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense to have
Yeah.
something else that the provider has to open and then go to another app.
That's right. And then you don't have any shared context, right? So you can't actually get information about your current visit,
Right.
because you don't know what that is unless you type it into the other app, right? So that's having all that data in one place is enabling us to do a lot more than just.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about now? As obviously the patient on the other side. Some of the things that I've heard is, I guess, kind of like the criticism of Squads is that we're very focused on the provider.
Yeah.
But you also, I think, there's benefit for the patient as well in that interaction, and then also, patients are using their own data apps now to download data.
Sure.
And empower their healthcare through using that data for their own benefits. So, is it possible to potentially, at some time in the future, you can see Heidi integrate with these patient apps as a additional layer?
It is possible. I'm not sure if we have plans for that right now, but it's definitely like an option, right? Because FHIR as well is supporting a lot of these like mobile records and like bring your own record wherever you go kind of stuff. And I think like we have. Because we now have the data, we can potentially do some around those lines. But
just to give you an example, I've been building my own kind of Claude AI, healthcare resources for me as a patient to help me visualize my history. So I would love to actually share that back into. And one way to do this is integrate with somebody like Epic, but then I have to go through this painful integration with every single EMR. And I think like having somebody like you guys that already did all of that integrating to do like a one-time integration with Claude, and then you guys can receive that kind of data, store it kind of in its own way.
And then you can move that across different EMRs if you moved somewhere else.
So I think the future is like really exciting in terms of us having this greater fidelity of, not even data, but information, reasoning that we're sharing across that goes into what provider is actually seeing on their side.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks, Andy, for your time. And then, I hope to see you again at another conference and hopefully FHIR events. I don't know if you guys are planning to come to Dev Days.
Maybe.
I'll be presenting for the first time.
Oh, cool. Your
CQL to SQL conversion stuff that I showed at SQL Empire and some other passion projects.
Cool.
Hopefully we can connect again.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you.
We're here at HIMSS 2026, and this is day 3. I'm here with Julia and Felix from FHIR Metrics. Hello.
Hi. Nice to be here.
You guys just had a very interesting presentation about radiology and kind of impact of AI and some of those topics. So,
well, there's also a HIMSS Europe, but it's very different from the US counterpart. I mean, this is here the real show where you can meet everyone. It's much, much bigger. I love HIMSS. It's a great community. I'm also participating actively in the German, Austria, Switzerland, DACH community of HIMSS. I think it's a unique place where like vendors meet customers. Medicine is a whole ecosystem, and here everyone meets. And so this is really a unique proposition of the HIMSS community.
What do you think about what's like the coolest AI tool that you've seen, or anything really interesting that?
That's your point.
Well, it's not a particular tool, but I have two things that have fascinated me. I'm a radiologist, so basically, but there are two things in medical IT that have fascinated me for decades, and these are interoperability on the one thing and AI on the other thing. And finally, the two find each other, because we really see, especially with agentic AI, that without interoperability, the thing is not going to work. And we see what we can do with agentic AI. This is also, so now AI is dependent on interoperability, and interoperability is driven by AI and the hype around AI. And this is a good thing happening right now.
So FHIR is a very interesting company.
So I think where we always start with is FHIR is not a database. And I think that's known in the industry, but FHIR is. So our technology is able to natively store FHIR data in a relational database. And this makes it, like you said, queryable. It makes it possible to use FHIR data for agentic AI, for real-time dashboards, and much more. And I think what always fascinated me was seeing what real hospitals are building on top of a data platform like that. Oncologist departments who are leveraging the technology in order to build huge cohort analytics over thousands of patients over many, many years in order to analyze melanoma. It's incredible.
What wowed me was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was experimenting with connecting an AI agent to FHIR because, obviously every AI agent can work very well with FHIR data because it's all trained with this data. But on the other hand, FHIR is quite verbose, and FHIR is really a solution to this because it's like a surgical precision instrument to pick just the data from the FHIR repository that you actually need. There was a friend of mine who was working for a pharmaceutical company asking if our hospital could participate in a clinical trial.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know, okay, how many patients do you see per month with this and this inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria? How did it develop over the last 3 years? How is the distribution across departments, etc.? Into the healthcare agent connected to FHIR. It immediately started to create queries. It was like 1 or 2 iterations back and forth, and I had the numbers, including the charts. I sent it to my friend of the pharmaceutical company, and he couldn't believe how fast I could come up with these numbers. I did not write one query on my own. Everything was done by the agent. And that was really, for me, even like, wow, something has really changed.
Having your data in FHIR, not just for interoperability, but now it can feed and power a lot of the other workflows as well. Population health, research, drug trials. So thank you for that. So what is your plan while you guys are here? Just learning more about what's going on with health IT. Do you have any particular things you're trying to get out of this conference?
Yeah, definitely meeting up with our partners, our existing clients, and also making new connections, also with partners who could help with data integration, actually, in order to get the data out of Epic, for instance, into FHIR. So these are the main things that we're targeting here at HIMSS.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, we're here from HIMSS 2026, and I am talking to the great Jason from Fast Health that you've seen earlier in another video already.
Popping in.
So he's just coming into view here, and I'm grabbing him for these conversations. Like, anyway, how you like the show?
Show's been great. I feel like it's always interesting to talk to other vendors, explore what's happening, the cutting edge of interoperability. I think it's really been interesting, the amount of momentum that you're seeing with Tefka, the growth of the network itself, response rates on the network, the amount of really innovative apps that are building on top of Tefka. It's been phenomenal.
What would you give people as advice? I've actually been doing a lot of work to learn about QHIMSS and integrating into that for a variety of different use cases. What would you give us some word of advice for organizations that are thinking about participating in Tefka, and then how easy is this whole process of even integrating, and then what is the type of data that currently you can expect to get?
Yeah, a lot of questions there. So I'd say organizations that want to connect to Tefka, I think one thing that I've heard many individuals and many organizations be confused by is which QHIN should they connect to? I think there is something to that, but something you should be aware of is that when you connect to one QHIN, you're essentially connecting to them all, right? They're required to share requests amongst each other. It's called a federated request. So when you connect to a QHIN, they will transmit your request to the other QHINs, and so you're going to get a response from the entire network. And that is incredibly beneficial, and that is the value of Tefka. You don't, in theory, need to connect to each network participant individually. Yeah. Instead, you connect to one, you connect to them all. In terms of the data that you're going to get, it's going to vary depending on the health system, the provider, the EHR they're using, how it's all set up under the hood. I think just from the individual access services perspective, which is where, our bread and butter, that's what we do. I think something to consider is that it's incredibly valuable to connect to TAFTA as a provider, because now patients are able to use apps through something like Fasten, through other individual access service vendors in this space, to view their own medical data. And so even if it's not perfect, even if it's maybe not in this ideal electronic format that we'd all love to have, that's all standardized and deep and rich, it's still much better. It's a much better experience for the patient than they were ever able to do previously.
Yeah, just getting your data into
Just getting
something
your
like
data.
Claude. And I did a
Yes.
whole post on my blog about I was able to bring in and share it with my open Claude agent. And the kind of insights you can see from like once you have gathered all your data, which obviously we know IPCP, ZMR, NetEnt, which by the way I have to connect to. So I actually know somebody that knows who the founder of that is.
Okay, let's do it.
Funny enough, small world. But your data is not tough. So for me, like very little data of mine because I haven't had big like a long hospital stay, but I haven't really like been part of the health system that much. But how do you view this as a, are we going to see like, continuous improvement with how much data becomes available? How do people like, how do you basically measure that?
Right. So I
I
think that's a great question. I think there's two things to consider, right? Connecting to a network from the provider perspective is expensive. In some cases, prohibitively expensive for those providers, right? And so when you talk about small private practices, clinics, primary care physicians, specialists, they might not want to connect because the incentives aren't there and it's too expensive. While at the same time, you're going to find that these networks are heavily indexed towards very large healthcare providers, right? Big health systems, multi-state disciplinary organizations. And so you're going to have to fall back to the patient portal. You're going to have to fall back to something called patient access APIs that are mandated under the HIMSS Act. And that is okay. But as you're aware, right, there's a lot of friction there. And anything that we can do, anything the regulatory space can do, anything the networks themselves can do to promote the connectivity of some of those, for lack of a better term, maybe dark spaces in
so like make sure they're not left behind. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
It is important.
It's not like there's a huge amount of incentive. Like,
Right.
I should go and talk to my ECP, and he's great, but ultimately, I don't even know that he would be able to even influence the buying decisions of the rest of the practice or whatever. Right? And it's like there's a lot of complexity there. So I think having that, having that payoff be more visible for the providers, specifically the small, it just probably is like one of the keys to making this fully operational, right?
For sure, for sure. There's certain types of data that you're not going to see on TACTA, and that is incredibly important to the patient. That it's like that lack of visibility makes the whole system, I believe, valuable. And so anything we can do to incentivize those smaller practices and smaller clinics to connect, I think is incredibly useful for everyone, not just the patient, but also providers elsewhere.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Jason. Awesome time at this HIMSS conference, and good to see you.
Pleasure like always.